Nobody really paid attention to the quiet girl who sat in the back corner of the classroom. She wasn't the type to raise her hand or join in on the loud conversations that filled the hallways between classes. Most days she just kept to herself, clutching her worn backpack and hurrying from one class to the next. Her name was Maya, and she lived in a small apartment right above her family's laundromat on Maple Street. If you walked past the building, you'd hear the constant hum of washing machines and smell the warm scent of fabric softener drifting through the vents. It wasn't fancy, but it was home. Every morning, Maya would wake up to the sound of her father already downstairs, sorting through piles of clothes that customers had dropped off the night before. Her mother would have left hours earlier for her shift at the hospital. Being a nurse meant long hours and tired feet, but her mom never complained. She'd come home late at night, kick off her shoes, and still managed to ask Maya about her day with a genuine smile. Money was always tight. There were times when Maya heard her parents talking in hushed voices late at night, worrying about rent or unexpected bills. She learned not to ask for things. No new clothes unless absolutely necessary, no field trips that cost extra money, definitely no music lessons, but music was all Maya could think about. It started when she was 7 years old. Her second-grade teacher had played a video during class, something about famous composers. When the sound of a piano filled the classroom speakers, Maya felt something shift inside her chest. It was like the music reached right through her and touched something she didn't know was there. From that moment on, she was hooked. She started watching piano videos on her phone whenever she got the chance. Her phone was old with a cracked screen that her father had tried to fix with tape, but it worked well enough. She'd sit on her bed after finishing homework, headphones plugged in, and watch pianists from all over the world play the most beautiful pieces she'd ever heard. There was something magical about watching their fingers dance across the keys. The way they moved seemed almost effortless, like they were having a conversation with the instrument. Maya would watch the same videos over and over, memorizing every finger position, every hand movement, every subtle shift in their posture. Her father noticed her obsession one evening. He'd come upstairs after closing the laundromat and found her sitting on her bed, her fingers pressing against the blanket as if she were playing an invisible piano. "You really love that music, don't you?" he asked, leaning against her doorframe. Maya looked up, a bit embarrassed at being caught. "I'm sorry, Papa, I know we can't afford lessons." Her father's expression softened. He sat down on the edge of her bed and thought for a moment. Then he smiled. "Wait here." He disappeared for about 20 minutes. Maya could hear him working on something downstairs, the sound of cardboard being cut and markers squeaking. When he came back up, he was holding a large piece of cardboard that he'd carefully drawn piano keys on with a black marker. "It's not a real piano," he said, laying it out on her small desk. "But maybe it's a start." Maya's eyes filled with tears. She hugged her father tight, and from that night on, that piece of cardboard became her most precious possession. Every single day after school, Maya would rush home, finish her homework as quickly as possible, and practice on her cardboard keyboard. She'd pull up videos on her phone and try to copy what she saw. Her fingers would press against the painted keys, and in her mind, she could hear the notes playing. She knew exactly what each key should sound like, even though they made no sound at all. She studied music theory from free websites. She learned about scales and chords, about rhythm and tempo. She practiced until her fingers ached, imagining the feeling of real keys beneath her fingertips. Sometimes her mother would peek into her room and see her sitting there, completely focused, her hands moving with precision over silent keys. "My dedicated girl," her mother would whisper, not wanting to break her concentration. At school, Maya would sometimes linger near the music room. If the door was open and no one was around, she'd peek inside and stare at the old upright piano sitting in the corner. It wasn't anything fancy, just a beat-up instrument that the school kept for the music class. But to Maya, it looked like the most beautiful thing in the world. She never went inside. The music room was for students who were actually in the music program, kids whose parents could afford the fees and the instrument rentals. Maya knew she didn't belong there. During lunch, while other kids talked about the latest movies or upcoming school events, Maya would sit alone and watch more piano videos on her phone. She'd gotten pretty good at reading sheet music just from watching and studying online. She could look at a piece of music and hear it in her head, imagining how it would sound if she could actually play it. Some kids at school thought she was weird, the girl who was always alone, always staring at her phone, never joining in on anything. But Maya didn't mind. She had her music even if it only existed in her imagination. Years passed like this. The cardboard keyboard became worn and faded, the drawn keys smudging from countless hours of practice. Maya had graduated from simple children's songs to complex classical pieces in her mind. She knew Beethoven and Mozart, Chopin and Debussy. She could visualize playing their most famous works, her fingers moving through the motions even though she'd never touched a real piano key in her life. By the time she turned 12, Maya had spent 5 years practicing on her silent keyboard. 5 years of dedication that no one except her parents knew about. 5 years of dreams that seemed impossible to reach. She'd long ago accepted that she might never play a real piano. Real instruments were for other people, people who had different lives than hers. That was just how things were. But sometimes, late at night when she couldn't sleep, Maya would lie in bed and imagine herself sitting at a grand piano on a big stage. She'd imagine the weight of the keys under her fingers, the rich sound filling a concert hall, people listening with their eyes closed and hearts open. It was just a dream, nothing more. She never told anyone at school about her cardboard piano or her hours of practice. What would be the point? They'd probably just laugh at her. The girl from the laundromat who pretended to play piano on a piece of cardboard. It sounded ridiculous even to her sometimes, so she kept it to herself, this secret passion that filled her heart and occupied her every spare moment. She kept watching, kept learning, kept practicing on her silent keys, never knowing that very soon, everything was about to change. Sometimes life has a funny way of surprising you when you least expect it. And for Maya, that surprise was just around the corner, waiting in the most unexpected place. Monday morning started like any other day. Maya walked through the school hallways with her backpack slung over one shoulder, heading toward her locker. The usual chaos surrounded her. Kids laughing, lockers slamming, the sound of sneakers squeaking against the polished floor. But today felt different somehow. There was an energy in the air, a buzz of excitement that Maya couldn't quite place. Small groups of students were huddled together, whispering and pointing toward the cafeteria. "Did you see it yet?" she heard someone say. "It's huge. I can't believe they actually brought one here," another voice responded. Maya's curiosity got the better of her. She followed the flow of students who were drifting toward the cafeteria, even though it wasn't lunchtime yet. When she reached the double doors, she stopped dead in her tracks. There, right in the center of the cafeteria, sat the most magnificent piano she had ever seen in person. It wasn't the old beat-up upright from the music room. This was a grand piano, sleek and black, its polished surface reflecting the fluorescent lights above. It looked like something out of a dream. A small crowd had already gathered around it, keeping a respectful distance as if it were a museum piece. Which, in a way, it was. Maya pushed through to read the sign that had been placed on a stand nearby. It explained that the city's symphony hall was undergoing renovations, and as part of a cultural arts program, they were lending the Steinway grand piano to the school for 1 week. Students were encouraged to play it during lunch periods. 1 week. Maya's heart started racing. 1 week with a real piano, a beautiful piano, right here in her school. She wanted to reach out and touch it right then and there, but the warning bell rang, jolting her back to reality. Students began dispersing to their first period classes, and Maya reluctantly pulled herself away. All through her morning classes, Maya couldn't concentrate. Her mind kept drifting back to that piano. She'd spent 5 years imagining what it would feel like to play a real instrument, and now one was sitting just a few hallways away. The question was, would she actually have the courage to play it? When lunch finally arrived, Maya grabbed her brown paper bag and headed straight for the cafeteria. The piano was surrounded by students again, but this time someone was playing it. A girl named Elizabeth Chen sat at the bench, her posture perfect, her fingers moving gracefully across the keys. Elizabeth was everything Maya wasn't. She came from a wealthy family, always wore nice clothes, and had been playing piano since she was 3 years old. Everyone knew she took lessons from some famous teacher downtown and competed in competitions all over the state. She had trophies and everything. The music Elizabeth played was complex and beautiful. Students gathered around, some recording videos on their phones, others just listening in awe. When she finished, everyone clapped, and Elizabeth stood up with a modest smile, soaking in the attention. "Who wants to go next?" someone called out. A few students who were in the music program took turns playing simple pieces. They weren't as good as Elizabeth, but they were confident, comfortable sitting at that bench like they belonged there. Maya sat at a table in the corner, eating her sandwich slowly, watching everyone interact with the piano. She wanted so badly to walk up there and try it herself, but fear kept her glued to her seat. What if she messed up? What if everyone laughed at her? After all, she'd never actually played a real piano before. What if all those years of practice on cardboard didn't translate to the real thing? This pattern continued for the next 3 days. Every lunch period, Maya would show up hoping to get a chance at the piano, but Elizabeth and her friends had essentially claimed it as their own. They'd take turns playing, chatting and laughing while sitting on the bench, treating it like their personal instrument. Other students seemed too intimidated to interrupt them. Elizabeth wasn't mean about it exactly, but she and her group had a way of making it clear that they were the serious musicians, and everyone else was just amateur hour. By Thursday, Maya was starting to lose hope. There were only 2 days left before the piano would be returned to the symphony hall. 2 days, and she still hadn't touched a single key. That evening, Maya practiced on her cardboard keyboard with more intensity than usual. Her fingers flew across the silent keys as she played through Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major, one of her favorite pieces. She'd been working on it for months, visualizing every note, every delicate phrase. In her mind, she could hear it perfectly. Her mother came home late that night and found Maya still at her desk, practicing. "Mija, you should be sleeping," her mother said gently, placing a hand on her shoulder. "Mama, there's a piano at school," Maya said quietly. "A real one. It's only there for 1 more day." Her mother knelt down beside her chair, looking into her daughter's eyes. "Have you played it yet?" Maya shook her head. "I'm scared. What if I'm not good? What if everyone thinks I'm stupid for even trying?" Her mother took both of Maya's hands in hers. They were rough from years of work, but warm and comforting. "Listen to me carefully. You've been practicing every single day for 5 years. 5 years, Maya. You've worked harder than most of those kids at your school could ever imagine. You deserve to play that piano just as much as anyone else." "But I've never played a real piano before," Maya whispered. "Then it's time you did," her mother said firmly. "Tomorrow you walk up to that piano and you play. Don't think about anyone else, just you and the music. That's all that matters." Maya nodded, feeling a surge of determination mixed with terror. The next morning, Friday, Maya woke up with butterflies in her stomach. This was it. The last day. If she didn't do it today, she'd never forgive herself. School dragged on painfully slow. Every class felt like it lasted forever. Maya kept checking the clock, watching the minutes tick by until lunch period. When the lunch bell finally rang, Maya didn't go to her locker or grab her lunch. She walked straight to the cafeteria, her heart pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. The piano sat there, as beautiful as ever. Elizabeth and her friends were already gathered around it, laughing about something. Elizabeth sat down at the bench and began playing a difficult piece, showing off as usual. Maya stood there frozen, watching. Maybe this was a bad idea. Maybe she should just forget about it. But then she remembered her mother's words. 5 years of practice, 5 years of dedication. She deserved this chance. Elizabeth finished playing and stood up, still chatting with her friends. Maya took a deep breath and started walking toward the piano. Her legs felt shaky, but she kept moving forward, 1 step at a time. As she got closer, she could see the keys clearly now. Real ivory keys, slightly worn from years of use. They were beautiful. Maya reached out, her hand trembling slightly, her fingers inches from the surface of those keys she'd dreamed about for so long. "Oh, this should be entertaining." The voice cut through the air like ice, and Maya's hand froze mid-reach. She looked up to see Elizabeth staring at her with an amused expression, a smirk playing at the corners of her mouth. Elizabeth's voice carried across the cafeteria, loud enough that heads started turning in their direction. Maya's hand hung in the air, still reaching toward the piano keys, but now she felt like she couldn't move. "The laundromat girl thinks she can play," Elizabeth announced, and there was something cruel in the way she said it. Not angry, just dismissive, like Maya was a joke that wasn't even worth getting upset about. A few of Elizabeth's friends giggled behind their hands. One of them, a girl named Jenny, whispered something that made the others laugh harder. Maya felt heat rising to her cheeks. The cafeteria wasn't completely full yet, but there were enough students around that she suddenly felt like she was standing in a spotlight. More kids were looking now, curious about what was happening. "I just wanted to try," Maya said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. Try? Elizabeth raised her eyebrows, crossing her arms over her chest. Do you even know how to read music? Have you ever taken a single lesson? Maya's throat felt tight. No, but I've been practicing. On what? Elizabeth interrupted. You don't have a piano. Trust me, everyone knows your family can't afford that. The words weren't shouted, but they hit Maya like a slap anyway. A boy standing nearby snorted. This is going to be bad, he muttered to his friend. More students were gathering now, drawn by the commotion. Maya could feel their eyes on her, could sense their anticipation. They were expecting her to fail, to embarrass herself. She was the quiet girl from the back of the class who never raised her hand, never stood out, never did anything remarkable. Why would anyone expect anything different now? Come on, let's see what you've got, Elizabeth said, gesturing toward the piano with a mock generous wave of her hand. Everyone deserves a chance, right? Her smile didn't reach her eyes. Maya looked at the piano bench, then back at the growing crowd. She could feel her confidence crumbling with every passing second. Maybe she should just walk away, save herself the humiliation. No one would blame her, but then something inside her shifted. She thought about her father, staying up late to draw those piano keys on cardboard because he wanted to give his daughter something, anything, to hold on to. She thought about her mother, working double shifts at the hospital, coming home exhausted but still asking about Maya's day with genuine interest. She thought about 5 years of silent practice, 5 years of dreams and dedication that no one knew about. She thought about every single day she'd spent pressing her fingers against painted cardboard, imagining this exact moment. Maya took a deep breath and walked to the piano bench. Her legs felt shaky, but she made them move. She sat down and the bench felt different than she'd imagined. More solid, more real. The keys stretched out before her, black and white, beautiful and terrifying at the same time. Behind her she could hear whispers, giggles, someone saying this was going to be hilarious. Her hands were trembling as she lifted them over the keys. This was it. This was the moment she'd been working toward for 5 years, and everyone expected her to fail. Maybe they were right. Maybe all those hours of practice on cardboard didn't mean anything in the real world. Maybe she was just a foolish girl with impossible dreams. But she'd come this far. She couldn't walk away now. Maya closed her eyes for just a moment, blocking out the cafeteria, the whispers, the mocking faces. She thought about the music itself. The Chopin nocturne she'd practiced hundreds of times in her mind. She could hear it so clearly, every note, every phrase, every delicate touch. She let her fingers fall gently onto the keys. The first note rang out, clear and pure. It was real. After 5 years of silence, she was making real music. Maya's eyes opened and her fingers began to move. The second note followed, then the third, and suddenly she wasn't in the school cafeteria anymore. She was inside the music and the music was inside her. Her fingers knew exactly where to go, as if they'd been playing this piano all along. The keys felt right under her touch, responsive and alive. The melody of Chopin's nocturne began to fill the space, soft and haunting. Maya's right hand carried the main theme, delicate and expressive, while her left hand provided the gentle accompaniment underneath. The music swelled and receded like breathing, like waves on a shore. She could feel it now, the difference between her cardboard keyboard and this beautiful instrument. The weight of the keys, the way they responded to her touch, the richness of the sound that came from the strings inside. It was everything she'd imagined and more. Her fingers moved across the keys with a grace that surprised even her. All those visualizations, all that practice, all those hours of imagining what each note would feel like. It was all coming together now. The muscle memory was there, built from years of repetition, and her hands knew exactly what to do. Behind her, the laughter had stopped. Maya didn't notice. She was lost in the music, her fingers dancing through the complex passages she'd memorized so completely. The nocturne was a piece that required not just technical skill but emotion, feeling, soul, and Maya poured everything she had into it. She played the delicate ornamentation with precision, the gentle runs with fluidity. When the music called for tenderness, her touch became softer. When it needed more passion, she gave it strength. Every phrase told a story, and Maya was speaking a language she'd studied for 5 years in secret. The melody climbed and fell, twisted and turned, carried by her fingers with a confidence that didn't match her trembling hands from just moments before. This was what she was meant to do. This was what all those years had been for. The cafeteria had gone completely silent. No whispers, no giggles, no shuffling feet. Just the sound of the piano, filling every corner of the room with beauty. Students who had been walking past stopped in their tracks. Teachers who were on lunch duty looked up from their conversations, drawn by the sound. Even the cafeteria workers paused what they were doing, listening. Elizabeth stood frozen, her arms no longer crossed, her mouth slightly open. The smirk had vanished from her face entirely, replaced by an expression that looked almost like shock. Maya played on, unaware of any of it. Her eyes were closed again, seeing the music in her mind, feeling it flow through her fingers. She reached the most delicate section of the piece, where the melody becomes almost fragile, like it might break if you breathed too hard. Her touch lightened and the notes floated through the air like whispers. Someone in the crowd pulled out their phone and started recording. Then another person did the same. And another. Within seconds, multiple phones were capturing this moment, this impossible performance from the quiet girl no one had paid attention to. The music continued to build, approaching the climax of the piece. Maya's fingers moved faster now, more complex patterns cascading runs that would challenge even an experienced pianist. But she didn't falter. She didn't hesitate. Every note was exactly where it needed to be, and then gradually the music began to wind down. The melody returned to its gentle theme, softer now, more reflective. It was like watching the sun set, beautiful and bittersweet. Maya played the final phrases with such tenderness that it almost hurt to hear it. The last note hung in the air, pure and clear, slowly fading into silence. Maya lifted her hands from the keys and opened her eyes. For a moment, nothing happened. The cafeteria remained completely silent, frozen in time. Maya sat at the piano bench, her hands still hovering slightly above the keys, suddenly aware of where she was again. Then, like a dam breaking, the applause started. It wasn't polite clapping. It was thunderous, genuine. The kind of applause that comes from people who've just witnessed something they didn't expect and can't quite believe. Students were cheering, some of them standing up from their tables. The cafeteria workers were clapping from behind the lunch counter. Even Mr. Patterson, the strict math teacher who never smiled, was applauding near the doorway. Maya turned around slowly and the sight nearly overwhelmed her. All these faces, all these people who moments ago had been laughing at her, were now looking at her with something completely different in their eyes. Respect, amazement, wonder. That was incredible. Someone shouted from the back. "How did you learn to play like that?" Another voice called out. Maya stood up from the bench, her legs still shaky, but this time it wasn't from fear. It was from the adrenaline, from the rush of finally doing the thing she'd dreamed about for so long. She looked around at the crowd, not quite sure what to say or do. Her eyes landed on Elizabeth, who was standing just a few feet away. The other girl's expression was complicated. The smugness was gone completely, replaced by something Maya couldn't quite read. Was it surprise? Embarrassment? Maybe a little bit of both. For a long moment, the two girls just looked at each other. Then slowly, Elizabeth started clapping too. It wasn't enthusiastic, but it was genuine. She nodded slightly at Maya, a small gesture of acknowledgement that spoke volumes. Before Maya could respond to anyone, Mrs. Chen, the school's music teacher, pushed through the crowd. She was a small woman with graying hair pulled back in a bun, and she looked absolutely stunned. "Young lady," she said, slightly out of breath from hurrying over. That was Chopin's Nocturne, one of the most difficult pieces for intermediate to advanced pianists. "Where on earth did you learn to play like that?" Maya felt all the attention focus on her again. I taught myself," she said quietly. "Taught yourself?" Mrs. Chen's eyebrows shot up. "With what teacher? What program?" "No teacher," Maya admitted. "I just watched videos online and practiced," the crowd murmured with surprise. Someone said, "No way," in disbelief. Mrs. Chen looked genuinely shocked. "But where did you practice? Do you have a piano at home?" This was the part Maya had been dreading. She could feel her cheeks getting hot again. "Not exactly. I practiced on a cardboard keyboard my dad made for me." The silence that followed was different from before. This time it wasn't awestruck. It was stunned disbelief mixed with something else. Sympathy maybe, understanding. Cardboard, Mrs. Chen repeated as if she hadn't heard correctly. Maya nodded, looking down at her shoes. My dad drew the keys on it. I've been practicing on it for 5 years. 5 years. Mrs. Chen put her hand over her heart. You've been practicing on cardboard for 5 years and you can play like that? The way she said it made Maya look up. There were tears in Mrs. Chen's eyes. The music teacher walked closer and placed both hands on Maya's shoulders. That's the most dedicated thing I've ever heard, she said softly. Do you understand how special that is? Most students have every advantage. Real pianos, professional teachers, and they don't have half the passion you just showed. Maya felt her own eyes getting watery. She'd never thought of it as special. It was just what she had to do because she loved music so much. I need you to come to my office after school, Mrs. Chen said firmly. We need to talk about getting you some real opportunities. The rest of lunch was a blur. Students kept coming up to Maya, asking her questions, telling her how amazing she was. People who had never spoken to her before suddenly wanted to know everything about her. Some asked for videos to share. Others just wanted to shake her hand. It felt surreal. This morning she'd been invisible, and now everyone knew her name. When the lunch period ended and students started heading to their next classes, Maya found herself walking down the hallway in a daze. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. Then it buzzed again. And again. She pulled it out and saw notifications flooding in. Someone had already posted the video of her playing on social media. It had been shared dozens of times in just the past 30 minutes. Comments were pouring in. Who is this girl? She's incredible. Wait, she learned this on cardboard? No way. This is the most beautiful thing I've heard all year. Someone get this girl a real piano. By the time Maya got to her next class, the video had spread beyond just her school. Students from other schools were sharing it. Parents were sharing it. By the end of the school day, it had thousands of views. Maya tried to focus on her classes, but it was impossible. Teachers had heard about what happened and kept giving her knowing smiles. Students whispered and pointed as she walked by, but now it wasn't mean. It was admiring. When the final bell rang, Maya remembered Mrs. Chen's instruction to come to her office. She made her way to the music wing, her heart pounding again, but for different reasons now. Mrs. Chen was waiting for her, and she wasn't alone. Principal Morrison was there too, along with a woman Maya didn't recognize. She was tall, elegant, with silver hair and kind eyes. Maya, please sit down, Mrs. Chen said warmly. This is Dr. Patricia Williams. She's the director of the City Music Conservatory. Maya's eyes widened. She'd heard of the conservatory. It was the most prestigious music school in the entire city, the place where serious musicians trained. Dr. Williams smiled and extended her hand. It's wonderful to meet you, Maya. I've just watched the video of your performance, and I had to come see you right away. Maya shook her hand, completely confused about what was happening. I've been teaching piano for 35 years, Dr. Williams continued, sitting down across from Maya. I've taught students who went on to play at Carnegie Hall, students who became professional musicians all over the world, but I have never in all my years seen anyone with your level of dedication and raw talent. Maya didn't know what to say. She just sat there trying to process the words. The fact that you taught yourself to play like that, without a real instrument, without a teacher, without any formal training, it's extraordinary. Dr. Williams leaned forward. Maya, I want to offer you a full scholarship to our youth program at the conservatory. The room seemed to tilt. Maya gripped the arms of her chair. A scholarship? Full scholarship, Dr. Williams repeated. That means no cost to your family. You'll get private lessons with our best instructors, access to our practice rooms and pianos anytime you want, and opportunities to perform in recitals and competitions. Everything a serious music student needs. Maya felt tears streaming down her cheeks before she even realized she was crying. But why? Why would you do this for me? Dr. Williams smiled gently. Because talent like yours comes along maybe once in a lifetime. And because you've already proven you have what it takes. The discipline, the passion, the dedication. All you've been missing is the opportunity. Now you have it. Mrs. Chen handed Maya a tissue, her own eyes misty. Principal Morrison was smiling broadly. There's more, Dr. Williams added. I've contacted someone at Steinway Piano Company. When they heard your story, they want to donate an upright piano to your family. It should be delivered to your home within the week. Maya couldn't hold it together anymore. She broke down completely, sobbing into her hands. All the years of dreaming, All the years of practicing on cardboard. All the times she'd felt like her situation was hopeless. It was all coming together in this impossible moment. "Thank you," she managed to say between sobs. "Thank you so much." Dr. Williams came around and gave her a gentle hug. "No, Maya, thank you. You've reminded all of us why we fell in love with music in the first place." Maya could barely remember the walk home from school that day. Everything felt like a dream, like she might wake up any second and find herself back at her cardboard keyboard, imagining all of this instead of living it. When she opened the door to the apartment above the laundromat, her father was there, sitting at the kitchen table with his laptop open. He looked up and his face immediately shifted to concern when he saw her tear-stained cheeks. "Mia, what happened? What's wrong?" Maya tried to speak, but the words caught in her throat. Instead, she just pulled out her phone and showed him the video. Her father watched in silence, his eyes growing wider with each passing second. When the video ended and the sound of applause filled the tiny kitchen, he looked up at her with an expression she'd never seen before. "That's you," he whispered. "That's really you playing?" Maya nodded, and then everything came spilling out. She told him about Elizabeth's mocking, about finally getting the courage to play, about Mrs. Chen and Dr. Williams and the scholarship and the piano that would be delivered to their home. Her father stood up and pulled her into the tightest hug she'd ever felt. His shoulders were shaking and Maya realized he was crying. Her strong, hard-working father who never complained, who worked 12-hour days in the laundromat without ever asking for anything, was crying tears of joy. "I always knew," he said into her hair. "I always knew that cardboard keyboard was just the beginning. I'm so proud of you, Maya. So incredibly proud." They stayed like that for a long time, just holding each other in the small kitchen until they heard footsteps on the stairs. Maya's mother burst through the door, still in her nurse's scrubs, her phone in her hand. "Someone at the hospital showed me a video," she said breathlessly. "They said it was going viral. I couldn't believe it was my daughter, my Maya, playing like that." She dropped her bag and joined the hug, and the three of them stood there together, a family that had never had much but had always had each other. That evening, Maya's phone wouldn't stop buzzing. The video had exploded online. It had gone from thousands of views to hundreds of thousands. News websites were picking up the story. Local TV stations were calling the school asking for interviews. But the messages that meant the most to Maya were the personal ones. Messages from kids around the world who said she'd inspired them. Kids who didn't have money for lessons or instruments, who thought their dreams were impossible. They said if Maya could do it, maybe they could too. One message in particular stuck with her. It was from a 10-year-old boy who lived in a small town and wanted to learn violin, but couldn't afford one. He said he was going to make a cardboard violin and start practicing, just like Maya had done. The thought that her story could help someone else chase their dreams made Maya cry all over again. The piano arrived on Tuesday afternoon. Maya was at school when the delivery truck pulled up to the apartment, but her father called her immediately, his voice filled with excitement. When she got home, there it was, a beautiful upright piano, rich mahogany wood sitting against the wall in their small living room. They'd had to move the couch and rearrange everything to make it fit, but nobody cared. It was the most beautiful thing Maya had ever seen. She sat down at it carefully, almost afraid to touch it. Her fingers trembled as they found the keys. She played a single note, then another, and the sound filled their tiny apartment with warmth. It was real. It was hers. Her first official lesson at the conservatory was that Saturday. Her mother took time off work to go with her. They rode the bus downtown, both nervous and excited, dressed in their nicest clothes. The City Music Conservatory was in a historic building with marble floors and high ceilings. Students walked through the halls carrying instrument cases, and the sound of music drifted from various practice rooms. Maya felt out of place at first, like she didn't belong somewhere so grand. But Dr. Williams greeted them warmly and gave them a tour. She introduced Maya to her new teacher, Mr. Kowalski, an older man with gentle eyes and hands marked by decades of playing. He listened to Maya play, asked her questions about her practice methods, and seemed genuinely impressed by what she'd accomplished on her own. "You have excellent instincts," he told her. "Now we're going to refine your technique, teach you proper form, and open up a whole new world of music for you. Are you ready to work hard?" Maya nodded eagerly. I've been working hard for 5 years already. I'm not going to stop now. Mr. Kowalski smiled. I believe you. The weeks that followed were intense but incredible. Maya went to the conservatory 3 times a week for lessons and practice. She learned proper hand position, breathing techniques, things about music theory that she'd never encountered in her online research. Every session revealed new layers to the art she loved. But the most unexpected change came at school. Elizabeth approached her one day in the hallway looking nervous. Hey Maya, she said quietly. Can we talk? They sat down on a bench outside the school, and for a moment Elizabeth just looked at her hands. I'm sorry, she finally said. For what I said that day at the piano. For how I treated you. I was awful. Maya didn't know what to say. She'd been so angry at Elizabeth, but now, looking at her, she just saw another kid who loved music. I think I was jealous, Elizabeth continued. I've had every advantage, the best teachers, the best instruments, my parents paying for everything. And you taught yourself on cardboard and played better than I ever have. It made me realize that maybe I've been taking it all for granted. You're really good too, Maya said honestly. I've heard you play. Elizabeth smiled sadly. I'm technically good. But when you played that day, there was something else. Passion. Soul. That's what I've been missing. They talked for a while longer, and by the end of it, something had shifted between them. Elizabeth asked if maybe they could practice together sometime, and Maya agreed. It seemed impossible a month ago, but somehow they were becoming friends. 6 months passed in a blur of lessons, practice, and growth. Maya's playing improved dramatically under Mr. Kowalski's guidance, but she never lost the emotional quality that had made her first performance so special. Dr. Williams suggested she perform in the conservatory's spring recital, a big event where families and music lovers from all over the city came to see the students perform. Maya was terrified but agreed. The night of the recital, Maya stood backstage in a simple black dress her mother had bought for the occasion. She could hear the concert hall filling up, voices echoing off the walls. This was so different from playing in the school cafeteria. Her parents were out there somewhere in the audience. So were Mrs. Chen and Principal Morrison. Elizabeth had come too, along with several other students from school. Even some of the customers from the laundromat had bought tickets. When it was her turn, Maya walked onto the stage. The concert hall was beautiful, with red velvet seats and golden lights. The piano sat there waiting, a magnificent grand piano much nicer than the one at school. Maya sat down at the bench and looked out at the audience. She could see her parents in the 3rd row, her mother holding her father's hand, both of them beaming with pride. She thought about the cardboard keyboard, still sitting on her desk at home. She'd never gotten rid of it. It reminded her of where she came from, of the dreams that had seemed impossible but weren't. Maya placed her fingers on the keys and began to play. The music that flowed from her that night was more than just notes on a page. It was 5 years of hope and dedication. It was her father's love drawn in marker on cardboard. It was her mother's encouragement after long shifts at the hospital. It was the courage to keep dreaming even when the dream seemed too big. When she finished, the applause was thunderous. People stood up, some wiping tears from their eyes. Maya stood and bowed, and as she did, she caught sight of her parents. They were crying again, but they were smiling too, so proud of their daughter who had turned a piece of cardboard into a concert hall performance. After the recital, people crowded around to congratulate her. But the moment that mattered most was when her mother hugged her tight and whispered, "You did it, Mia. You really did it." Maya hugged her back and realized something important. She hadn't just achieved her dream of playing piano. She'd learned that where you start doesn't determine where you finish. That dedication and passion can overcome any obstacle, that sometimes the biggest limitations exist only in our minds. The girl who'd been laughed at for touching a piano had shown everyone, including herself,